Both Panasonic and Olympus make 1.4x teleconverters, in both cases fitting only selected lenses in their lineup. In Olympus's case, the 40-150 f2.8 Pro zoom and 300mm f4 prime. In Panasonic's, the 50-200 f2.8 to 4 zoom and their 200mm f2.8 prime. You'll notice that all are long focus lenses. That's because converters take the image emerging from the rear element of the lens and spread it out, essentially magnify it. With shorter focal lengths and especially wide angles, off-center performance is always inferior to the center. That would get magnified too, making for poor image quality. Long lenses have fewer issues with edge performance, so a converter is more practical. The 50-200 zoom, designed to cover a 17x13mm sensor with converter, would cover a 24x18mm sensor. Since we haven't changed the sensor size, that wider coverage is cropped, giving the effect of a longer lens. Panasonic's 1.4x looks and performs pretty much the same as Olympus's, but is a good bit more expensive. It is weather sealed and it's compact, so even a crowded camera bag will have room for it. All the electronic contacts are there, so the lens feels the same with it or without it, and it duly reports itself present and EXIF as 280mm instead of 200mm. In use, the f4 of the zoom at 200mm becomes f5.6. But unlike a DSLR, this doesn't lead to any darkening of the live image, of course. I didn't find any deterioration in focusing speed, and in use you can just forget it's there. The performance is very good, and you need to be looking for it to see any degradation of the lens performance. Here are some pertinent results. I think they are good enough, and the 280mm close enough to 300mm to make ownership of a 300 unnecessary. So long as you can make do with f5.6 rather than f4, of course. Just out of interest, here's a shot with the 50-200mm plus converter and my old Nikkor 300mm 4.5 from the 80s. The converter fits that too, giving a neat 420mm at f6.3. With an angle of view of 2.5 degrees horizontally, 17 times magnification, that's seriously telephoto. The Nikkor was a quarter of the price of the converter, but I only pack it if I know I'll be using it, where the converter just tucks anywhere in my bag. At the end of the day, the 1.4x converter is a very practical way of extending the use of a lens. The philosophy of converter use is quite interesting. If your pics will be displayed on a tablet, phone or 10-inch print, say, cropping will be just as good as the converter, since you are discarding pixels anyway. On the other hand, the converter image is still larger, so the same crop could give you a more dramatic image. Whichever way you look at it, the converter, at root, magnifies the image, so lens resolution must be reduced by the amount of the magnification. In the real world, the sharpness of modern lenses goes way beyond what the eye can see on our display media, so the loss to a converter will rarely be apparent. If it is, that is probably more the result of loss of contrast due to the added glass elements than definition. The converter is supplied standard with Panasonic's 200mm f2.8, giving you a 280mm f4. A 280 f4 is a very useful lens for wildlife and some sports. A 280mm f5.6 is somewhat less useful, especially when you can buy Panasonic's own 100-300 4.5-5.6 for the same price. Nevertheless, Panasonic's 1.4 converter represents a useful addition for photographers with limited space in their camera bag. If you have already bought the 200mm f2.8, Panasonic will have generously given you the converter free, gratis and for nothing, apparently. If you have the 50-200mm, you have to buy it. I've heard the saying, "To him who hath shall be given." Now I understand it. Thanks for watching.